Hello listeners, I am Ranjit Kaur, Assistant Professor Political Science at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. In the last module, we started with the making of Indian Constitution. We covered the demand for the Constitution Assembly, how the demand was raised, who was the first person to raise this demand, and how did the Britishers accepted it. The various commissions which were being sent forward by the Britishers to India to form Constituent Assembly. The composition also was being discussed, but I did said that the princely state did not participated in the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly and nor even the Muslim League. So what happened? The problem was that they wanted a different state, their autonomous region. The problem was the Muslim League wanted a separate autonomous state of Pakistan, and princely state also wanted autonomous region. And I quoted that there was a Mountbatten Plan. So let us start with what was the Mountbatten Plan. Lord Mountbatten was sent to India as the last viceroy, and his work was to speed the power transfer from the then Prime Minister Clement Attlee. In May 1947, Lord Mountbatten came up with a plan under which the provinces were being given autonomy so that they can become an autonomous region, and then it will be decided by them whether they want to join Constituent Assembly or not. This plan was also known as Dickey Plan, Bird Plan, Dickey Bird Plan. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru strongly opposed the plan. He believed that it will result into balkanization. Now, what is balkanization? That means the whole region is being fragmented into small sub-regions, and they will be given autonomy. As a result, there will be no unity and there will be no one country like India. This plan is also known as Plan Balkan. Later on, the Viceroy came up with another plan which is famous by 3rd June Plan. Now, what is this 3rd June Plan, which is also known as Mountbatten Plan, under which Mountbatten came up with an idea of dividing India and Pakistan into two autonomous regions. Finally, Indian Congress, who was always opposing the partition of India, accepted it because they felt in order to stop riots which were spread all over India, there is a need for such kind of option. And so, the Indian Independence Act was passed in year 1947 from the Parliament of Britain, and the royal assent was given on 18th of July 1947, under which two independent states were being formed, and now they will have their own constituent assemblies. Let us talk about the working of the Constituent Assembly. For the first time, the meeting was held on 9th December 1946, in which only 211 members participated. Now, Mountbatten Plan came in the year 1947. The first meeting of the Constituent Assembly, which was being framed on the basis of Cabinet Mission Plan, there the division was not being done. And that is why only 214 members participated, and Muslim League as well as the princely state, they remain away from the cabinet, from the Constituent Assembly. For the first time, they selected the temporary president, and Dr. Sachidanand Sinha was elected as a temporary president of the assembly. Now, this was a French practice where the senior most person is being appointed as the president, and his duty is to conduct election and to appoint or elect a permanent president. So on 11th of December 1946, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president. Mr. H.C. Mukherjee and V. Krishnamacharya were elected as the vice president. So you could see that there were two vice presidents at the time. Sir B.N. Rao was appointed as a constitutional advisor. He has contributed a lot in the framing of Indian constitution. Now, what were the changes which were being made after the Indian Independence Act? Now, after the Mountbatten Plan, we know that the partition was being done. Princely states who remained away from the Constituent Assembly, slowly and gradually they joined. After the partition, all those who fall under the dominant of Pakistan, they joined Pakistan. The others, those who fall under the dominant of India, they joined India. And as a result, the members of the Muslim League from the Indian provinces also entered the assembly. Assembly was made a full sovereign body which could frame any constitution. Now, the Mountbatten Plan actually has come up with the principle of partition, autonomy, giving powers to both the regions to frame their own constitution. So that is why the division was being done, and this body was made as a sovereign body. Act also empowered the assembly to alter any laws. So they can abrogate, they can alter any laws which are being made by British Parliament previously. And they can implement any laws which they feel suits Indian constitution, which they feel suits India. So that much power and autonomy was being given to the Constituent Assembly. Assembly also became a legislative body. There were two separate functions which were being performed by the Constituent Assembly. Number one was making of the constitution. So whenever they used to sit to frame the constitution of Free India, then Dr. Rajendra Prasad used to preside over the meetings. So he was the chairperson. The other function which was assigned to the Constituent Assembly was the enactment of ordinary laws for the country, since there was no parliament at that time. So when they used to sit for the enactment of the laws, then it was being chaired by G.V. Mavlankar. These two functions continued till November 26, 1949, when the task of making the constitution was over. Consequently, the total strength of the assembly, it came down to 299, as originally it was 389, and this 389 was fixed under the Cabinet Mission Plan which came to India in 1946. But that time India and Pakistan was not divided, and after the division the strength was lowered to 299, in which even the princely states, which were 93, came down to 70. On 13th of December 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru came up with an objective resolution. So he presented objective resolution in the Constituent Assembly. And this objective resolution later on turned up into the preamble of Indian Constitution. That was an historic presentation. Let us look at the members of Drafting Committee. The Drafting Committee was set up on August 29, 1947, and was tasked to prepare a draft of new constitution. There were in all 7 members of this committee, which was being chaired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Dr. K. M. Munshi, T. T. Krishnamacharya, Syed Muhammad Saadullah, N. Madhav Rao, Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. These were the 7 members who were the members of Drafting Committee. The first draft of the Constitution was published in February 1948. People were given 8 months to discuss. After discussions, suggestions and proposed amendments were considered and the second draft was prepared by the Assembly. The second draft was published in October 1948. The drafting committee met for a total of 141 days and they took less than 6 months to prepare the draft. And the final draft was introduced in the Constituent Assembly on 4th of November 1948. The motion on the draft of Constituent Assembly was declared to be passed on 26 November 1949. So, the enactment and enforcement of the Constitution was done on 26th of November 1949. The remaining provisions, that means the enforcement, came into being on 26th of January 1950. And this day is considered to be as the date of commencement. So here one should keep in mind that 26th of November 1949, as it is written in the preamble, that we adopt, enact and give ourselves this Constitution. So we celebrate 26th November as a Constitution Day, whereas 26th January is celebrated as Republic Day. So some of the provisions got implemented on 26th November and the remaining got implemented on 26th January. Why this particular date was being chosen? There is an historic importance to this date because in 1935, January 26th, Purna Swaraj was being declared, and keeping that in mind, 26th January was kept as a day of proper enforcement of the Constitution. Apart from drafting the Constituent Assembly, the members of the Constituent Assembly performed other functions also. What they did was ratified India's membership of Commonwealth in May 1949. Since we know all the powers of ratification is in the hands of the Parliament whenever any treaty and agreement is being signed. So they ratified it, the membership of Commonwealth, and then adoption of national flag was done on 22nd July 1947. After 26th November 1949, they met again on 24th January 1950. And what did they do there was adoption of national song on Jan 24th, 1950, adoption of national anthem January 24th, 1950, and also the first president of India was elected on 24th of January 1950, that was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Their work continued. That does not mean that their work was over. Their work continued till the fresh elections were being conducted in 1951-52 and the new parliament was formed. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chief architect of Indian Constitution, finally he presented the draft on 26th of November and majority of people signed the draft on that day. That person is considered to be as modern Manu, a constitutional expert who could be given the credit of framing Indian Constitution. The Constituent Assembly took almost 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. In all, 11 sessions were conducted. They met for 141 days and they studied 60 countries' constitution. And the total amount which was incurred in drafting the constitution was 64 lakhs. But critics have their own criticism, so we cannot avoid criticism. So let us talk about the major criticism. The first criticism was that it was not a representative body. It was decided earlier that the members of Constituent Assembly will be elected directly by the people on the basis of federal franchisee. But there were different modes of selection was being adopted, which we have done in the last module. So that is why it has been said that it was not a representative body. Secondly, critique says that not a sovereign body. Why it was not a sovereign body? Because before conducting any session, they need to take permission from the British government. And that is why critique says that it was not a sovereign body. Thirdly, time consuming. If you compare with the Constitution of America, that took only 4 months to frame a constitution, whereas, as I said, Indian Constitution has taken altogether 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. But if we say American Constitution has only 7 articles, whereas in our Constitution there were 395 articles. So definitely it will take some time to prepare this, plus schedule as well as a preamble. Dominated by Congress. Some of the critiques argued that it was being dominated by Congress party. So they say one party for the whole country altogether, and maximum people were from Congress party itself. Then the another criticism is lawyer politicians' dominance. Some of the critique maintained that the Constituent Assembly was dominated by lawyers as well as politicians. The members from the society did not have their representation in the Constituent Assembly. Why? Because the document was very bulky and the language was very tough. And it is very difficult for the layman to understand. Whereas the last criticism was domination by Hindus. Some of the critique says that it was dominated by Hindus. Though we know there were representatives from every community, minorities, all were represented in the Constituent Assembly, but then two critiques consider that the majority of the Hindus were there in the Constituent Assembly. These were the major criticism which was being raised against Constituent Assembly. But finally, India got its own destiny, which was framed by their own people. In the next module, we will be talking about the preamble, which was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru in the form of objective resolution, which was later on converted into a preamble. So see you in the next class.